All right, and we are live. Thank you guys for coming back and tuning in. I have a recurring guest on the show, Mr. Steve Wright, who is a gut health expert. There is a playlist that is linked in the information section, as well as everything we're going to talk about today. Lots of stuff in the information section for you guys. But, Steve, thank you for coming on today and joining us.
Sarah, thank you for having the community and the platform.
Yeah, it's a great community. I love my audience. I love them, and I just want to continue to give them helpful information. I feel like there's so much information out there about hormones, and especially my ladies that are in their mid 30s and beyond, that just really truly struggle with the hormones. And so I'm excited to hear how this kind of ties into gut function for sure.
Yeah, it's a circle. It's like the circle of life. The hormones affect the gut affects the hormones. It's a bi-directional feedback loop. So anything you're doing in your hormones will be affecting the gut, and if you're working on your gut health, you'll be affecting your hormone health. But to be honest with you, uh, they need to go hand in hand. So,
Yeah.
if someone is struggling with their hormones, they need to be working on hormones and gut. And if someone's struggling with their gut, they need to be working on gut and hormones.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah. So cool. Well, if we could just briefly back up for a second while we wait for a couple people to come on. I see some people that are already watching. What is your background, just in a brief little nutshell? I always like to intro the video just with you, your background. You have such expertise in gut health, and I just want to qualify that here at the beginning.
Yeah. So my college training was in electrical engineering, and I've had gut health issues since birth and struggled most of my life with those. Uh, Soon after I graduated, I got a job with like a dream company, a big four consulting firm, and I was trying to live like what I thought was the dream life from my childhood. And I was having all kinds of issues. I was having panic attacks. I was depressed. But worst of all, I was having really intense bloating, and it would make me cry every day. And
Mm,
so I had all kinds of accidents on buses and missed dates and all kinds of things. But all the doctors I saw and the world that I was in Chicago at the time was like, just suck it up. You're a man. This is your family history, IBS. You can figure this out. And so I tried that, but then my boss was like, "Hey, you're stinking up the office. Your
oh
your coworkers are
man.
complaining, so you have to do something about this." So luckily, I had a great friend, Jordan Reesner, who was actually also basically dying from celiac disease. The
Mm,
gluten-free diet wasn't working for him. Turns out he needed to remove a lot more foods and go on something called the specific carbohydrate diet. He convinced me that I should give that a shot. It really alleviated much of my symptoms in like a week, and you turned all that pain and anger and frustration and I was able to channel it into something else. Like, holy cow, I can take personal responsibility here and do something that doctors are not able to or unwilling to do for me. And no one else seems as enrolled in my own health as I do. And so I just took all the frameworks of engineering and applied it to the body and started to try to reverse engineer my way back to health. That led to getting certified in functional medicine with the Kalish Institute. And yeah, over a decade worth of just reading journal articles, tinkering with my own diet, about $400,000 worth of
oof.
different
Yeah.
uh, procedures, hacks, tricks, things that are underground, above ground, everything. So, and along the way, it's led to me trying just to help other people alleviate their suffering, provide better solutions. In the engineering world, we're always trying to
Yeah.
over-engineer things based on risk reward. You can't build a car or a bridge that fails. That's just not allowed. And somehow in medicine, I feel like we could use a lot more engineers in medicine to work
Yeah.
on these solutions in that way.
I agree. And one of my other companies I work with, Upgraded Formulas, the owner, Barton Scott, who I just had on recently, he's a chemical engineer and he works in minerals specifically. And I feel like a lot of the people that kind of figure, and we have so many chemical engineers and engineers that really like Dave Feldman understands cholesterol better than a lot of doctors that I've talked to and that I've, researched. I feel like chemical engineers really, really, truly understand the body and learn how to figure things out sometimes better than just a medical doctor.
Yeah, I mean, it's both and, right? They have skill sets that we don't have, and a
Yep.
way of viewing the body that we don't have, and we have a way of viewing the body and a skill set that they don't have. So it's
Yep.
both and, but yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Cool. Well, I have some questions for Steve, and I know I see a couple of questions in the chat, so we'll try to get to those if we get through all of these. But the first one is just a basic one, like how are the gut and hormones connected?
Yeah, like I said, it's like the circle of life. what what goes around comes around is literally happening, and that's why so many things can influence both. So,
Yep.
just at a super high level, I don't think most people get this, and for a long time I didn't get it. But for instance, you can think about progesterone as a slowdown hormone, and estrogen as sort of a speed up hormone,
Oh,
and so. Um, a lot of women will oftentimes experience some GI upset the week before their cycle, and a lot of times that's when progesterone is at its peak, and
yep.
so
Yep.
it's slowing things down usually.
Yep.
Um, if someone is having a lot of constipation, they should definitely get their estrogen levels checked. You might not have enough estrogen, so
Ah,
there's a lot going on there. And then of course, if we start to play this out into perimenopause and then menopause, constipation tends to get worse as we age,
yep, it does.
and estrogen drops dramatically in each one of those phases. Um, and so I think there's a strong correlation there as well. Also, estrogen helps with microbiome diversity. And so we know microbiome diversity drops as we age. It's part of the aging process we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
So in general, progesterone and estrogen, like all things in the body, we want them in their right window of like perfect tolerance, if you will. And when they're outside of that, high or low, it causes wacky things. And this is why, for instance, some women are like totally fine until they hit perimenopause, and then IBS just goes off or IBS or their gut goes off the rails. Or women have struggled their whole life, they get pregnant, and all of a sudden they're like, I can eat anything, I can eat dairy
Yep.
again. And so anytime we really modify these estrogen or progesterone levels, the gut is immediately affected.
Yep, exactly. And I don't think people understand the whole, progesterone, estrogen thing and how these levels, a lot of women don't understand how they really fluctuate throughout the month, like you said. And then, women at 35, and I'm even seeing it younger now, it's like this epidemic of women hitting perimenopause earlier and earlier, I think, because of so much stress in our environments, improper circadian rhythms, just and environmental issues. I think perimenopause is happening for women younger and younger now, and so um, I'm seeing a lot of these issues with women younger and younger, and it's a lot of the time the progesterone is very low. And, that week before the cycle hits is just hell, and that's how I always tell women. I'm like, if you are the week before your cycle is complete hell for you and you're, just cranky and irritable and not feeling well and the gut issues come along with that, then you probably want to get those hormones checked out, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's a woman's body is just highly complex. Like
Yeah.
in the functional medicine training I did, Dr. Kalish is really big into female hormones as well as male hormones, but male hormones are just like, um, I don't want to get into gender politics, but I mean, they're literally kind of simple like men, and women's hormones are like an orchestra. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on, and they're complex. And you know, everything is a sign from the body. So if you're experiencing, upset the week before your cycle or during your cycle,
Yeah.
or these are all signs your body's giving you. It's actually communicating, hey, something's out of balance.
Hmm.
And you should get that tested, and or play around with some things and get tested to try to help it. Because what I've seen, I think what you were alluding to is like the earlier the issues start, like if
Hmm.
they start in your teens, if they start in your 20s,
Hmm.
they just sort of compound over time. And
Yep.
so it seems like my experience has been when I do interviews with women, those who have the hardest perimenopause and menopause already had hormone
PCOS. Yep.
symptomologies. Yeah, PCOS, PMS, all kinds of things way back in their 20s.
Yep.
And so it's usually the same thing with IBS, frankly. They go hand in hand. Like
Yep.
most people have some food sensitivities, bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation. It's mildly annoying for a long time. And then bam, something changes in their 40s or their 50s or their 60s. And now we're talking full-blown IBS or IBD. And then it just gets worse after that. So it's not that the body's communicating the whole time. We're just
Yeah.
ignoring it usually.
Yeah, and the gut is one of those things that we probably should not ignore that most of us do. I feel like so many people are constipated or they have loose stools and they just ignore it because like you said it's kind of this low-lying low-level issue until it's huge, until it blows up. But just a low level of constipation or a low level of loose stools is a sign that there is something underlying going on with your gut, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. Just like PMS or PCOS or cysts or fibroids or anything like that is a sign that you have something going on with your hormones. Any sort of inability to digest and be in your environment, just regular foods, is a sign that something's going wrong there, and you should dig deeper. And you're probably going to have to do something with functional medicine or integrative medicine or somebody like that to do some tests and help you unravel what's the root causes here. But there are a lot of things you can do and take responsibility for, today that can help your body begin to heal or at least support it while you find out, maybe where your estrogen levels are, where your progesterone levels are, or where your gut is at, things like that.
Yeah, I agree. And, we've kind of already discussed this second question a little bit already. Women, I feel like they're more vulnerable, obviously, to hormone change because, like you said, they're like a symphony, and men, I kind of think of as more like a rock band, right? um, but is there any way to avoid this for women, these hormone changes? It's pretty much inevitable, right?
Yeah, not perimenopause and menopause. I mean, I think the Western society we do a lot to avoid death and the talk of death, and
Yeah.
menopause in a way is death of the ovaries, and I don't think women really are trained or taught that. And
Mm-mm.
it's a big like aha when you really get, and you don't just hear us say this, but you think about it, you go meditate, you're like, holy cow, my ovaries are literally going to shrink up and stop
It's
for the
organ
most part.
failure.
Yeah.
Women have organ failure in their, mid to late 40s and sometimes earlier. And no one really talks about it. And we get to continue living on for, decades hopefully after that. So it's like we have to learn how to navigate this time in our lives, and not feel like complete crap and have our gut be a total mess. That's my hope that, we can help people out of this chat for sure.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, answer the question. It's not avoidable.
No, it's not avoidable, and unless you're like trying to go to death and taxes, like the two unavoidable things. Like menopause is basically not avoidable unless you're going to be on a physiologic HRT replacement the rest of your life, which is it's a possibility and an alternative. But for 99% of women, this is unavoidable. And unfortunately, it does appear that it's moving up as the generations go on. So, like our
Mhm.
generation, it's happening to our women faster than
Mhm.
our parents.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much in our environment and just our daily lives. I feel like that's coming into play there. We could talk all day about those things, but yeah, it is definitely happening younger and younger for people, and I see more people suffering that are coming to me. So yeah, it's
And it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be suffering. And I guess in some ways, listening to this conversation in my own head, I'm like, oh, this sounds like doom and gloom, but it could be your awakening into the next level of health as well. It's not the end of the world, and there are things you can do.
Yeah, let's get into that. So let's give some experience, strength, and hope here as we jump into, talking about that this is going to happen for a lot of people, and a lot of people are struggling. Um, how can we navigate this, especially when we talk about the gut?
Yeah, so I mean, um, from a hormone perspective, seeking out not just a doctor or not just a health provider, but someone who specializes in female hormones and sees like hundreds of people,
Yep.
that's one of the best things you can do. They're out there, and they're not hidden if you go searching, and ask a lot of questions before you sign up. So getting some tests done on, and not just one type of test. Don't just fall for this idea that urine testing is the best type of
Yeah, the
testing, or
Dutch test, right?
yeah, the Dutch test is fine, but it's not fine for certain things. Blood serum testing is really great to go along with Dutch testing,
Mm,
and salivary testing, where you spit in vials,
yep.
is very helpful for other things. So this idea that there's just one test, and doctors who or healthcare providers who just rely on one test, I'm highly skeptical of. I've seen issues in the gut health world where you fall into these dogmatic camps, and to be honest, they're the same thing is true with hormones. So um, starting there is a huge thing. And if you're pre-menopause, if you're still cycling, this is the time to get on a bioidentical rhythmic dosing hormone replacement if you're going to do it. Risk do go up if you're going to replace things later on after you're fully menopausal. And so the time to deal with your hormones is the first time that you notice it and you sort of awaken to like, hey, things are changing. Um, you can do a lot with food, you can do a lot with your gut, but replacement is the only real like big gun you have, or support with sort of extracts and things like that.
Gotcha. And how could we support the gut during this process? I guess my next question is, the change that happens in stomach acid, and how could we, how to physiologically and structurally, what's going on in the gut when these hormones start to shift?
Yeah. So, and this is really important, is that if you support one, you're supporting the other. And
Mm,
so if your hormones are starting to go wacky, or they already are wacky, or they're declining, the more you can support the gut and tend to it, the better your hormones are going to be, uh, the longer. So, um, for instance, I mentioned estrogen helps with microbiome diversity. So anything that increases microbiome diversity is really good. As estrogen drops, typically your body will try to replace it with
mm,
things like cortisol or things like that, which tends to turn off stomach acid. So as you age, as you feel into these hormone issues, looking at low stomach acid is a big deal. And even going so far as to maybe if the week before your period you do get constipated, increasing your dosage of HCl guard that week
mm,
only, because you're about to be constipated. So there's like infinite layers here as to how much support you could give your body. But the more stomach acid you have, the more you're going to get nutrients. Those
mm,
nutrients are actually needed for hormone creation,
mm,
and also defense of uh, basically a really solid microbiome, and creating that right thing. Because we're not going to get too deep into it today, but there's this thing called the estrobiome, basically, is
mhm.
how they're talking about it. And it's this idea that in breast cancer, as well as in other cancers, there's a distinct microbiome shift that's
Yes.
different than healthy controls. And there's also distinct shift in the microbiome in menopause versus younger women. And so part of what's happening here is estrogen, after it's used, it goes into the liver, it gets basically detoxified, it gets conjugated, or I always get those mixed up, but basically it gets bound up so that it's not free anymore. It goes into the intestines, and then the spent estrogen is some of it's supposed to go into the toilet. And there's this enzyme called beta glucuronidase,
Mm.
which basically splits that detox estrogen back open so that the body can reabsorb estrogen. And so it mostly comes from your microbiome. And the research studies are not clear yet what species exactly. It seems like a lot of them can do it. But it does seem that the more diversity you have, the more you're protected from having too much beta glucuronidase or too little. Because again, you don't want too much or too little. You want just the right amount of estrogen going into the toilet and just the right amount of estrogen going back into your body. Constipation makes this worse because then it's just sitting around and you get this thing called hepatic recirculation. And so if you're headed into a phase of your life where you're going to be more constipated, anything you can do from stomach acid support to more prebiotics, probiotics, Tributyrin X, butyrates, things like that, that can keep you regular, the better you're going to be, no matter, if you're already too high or too low on any of these things. So keeping just regular detoxification, regular bowel movements is one of the most important things to stopping the breakdown of your gut and the breakdown of your hormones. That will help stabilize you faster than almost anything.
Got it. I mean, so really this epidemic of breast cancer, and I know it's specific types of estrogen that are overloaded that can lead to the breast cancer. If you're having a lot of constipation, if you're not getting out the estrogen, if it's backing up, if you're not really having like that phase 1 detox, you could possibly be more susceptible to issues like that, right?
Yeah, it's definitely part of the cacophony of breast cancer. It's not the sole
Not the sole reason.
reason in any regard, but it's just one factor in cancers. So, yeah, proper detoxification, proper elimination is important for all types of cancers. And there is no smoking gun here. There's no
Yeah.
you're not going to like prevent or cure cancer just by getting unconstipated. But your body has to detoxify every day.
Yeah.
How do we detoxify? I mean, the best way I've ever described it is poop, pee, and sweat.
Yeah.
If you're pooping every day, if you're peeing every day, and you're sweating every day, your chances of having a healthy, long life are significantly increased. And that, we can go back and look at how constipation is related to all-cause mortality and to all these other issues. We can look at how sauna studies lead to longer life, urination and kidney and liver function. So detoxification needs to happen on a daily basis. And if that is blocked up, as you mentioned, either phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3, most of what we were just talking about there is considered phase 3,
Yeah.
Which is often what's blocked.
Yeah.
You're gonna have ramifications that can build up.
Yeah. So the main thing, when I talk to women, especially, I will ask them like, how often are you going to the bathroom? And if someone tells me 3 times a week, I'm like, that's something where I would definitely recommend at least checking your stomach acid, make sure it's not low, which a lot of people, once we hit 35, we've talked about this in other live streams, once you get past 35, men and women, our stomach acid production goes down. So that's where I would say, let's let's check that out and possibly supplement with like something like HCl guard. And how does the enzymatic function play into all of this as well?
So, and just to double down on what you just said there, your stomach acid is basically one of the other speed regulators inside your digestion. So typically, well, not typically, but the pH of your stomach and when it dumps into the small intestine, if that is off, if it's too high or too low, you're going to have speed issues the rest of the way, and your body's going to be trying to play catch up. So that's why Sarah's mentioning stomach acid to start with if you're constipated, because you can do all the probiotics in the world, you can do all the fibers in the world. Doesn't mean that you're ever going to solve this. If you do those in combination with HCl guard or another HCl product, you're going to be much better off trying to alleviate that. So the other part and why it matters is that if the stomach acid is not proper coming out of the stomach into the small intestine, if it's too low or too high, your pancreatic enzymes won't be activated. They won't really turn on. They turn on via pH,
Mm.
as well as mineral cofactors. And so if you lose your enzymatic function, or you lose 50% of it, now you don't harvest the vitamins and minerals out of your food. And then you create this further downward cycle of like, you don't have the stuff to repair and make better hormones, or repair your gut lining, or support your immune system. You also create a buffet for bacteria to eat in your small intestine, because the food should be gone. It's not gone. And so now nature just grows around it, which tends to, create conditions for things like SIBO,
Mm.
SIFO, candida, like all types of overgrowths, which lead to bloating and gas, and could be related to loose stools, or constipation, or things like that. So getting your enzymes correct and getting your stomach acid correct are like the basics. That's like, when you want to go run a marathon and you're focused on buying new shoes, instead of just getting out the door and like walking a couple miles. Like, that's what stomach acid and enzymes are going to do. You can buy all the cool prebiotics you want,
Yeah.
but if you don't get those two right, you can change your diet 13 times. If you don't get those two right, you're not going to stabilize the system.
Yeah, and on that same token, I have so many people that will see a functional medicine doctor that doesn't address these basic things, and they come to me with a list of supplements that they're taking, and I'm like, you're not going to be able to absorb any of that. You're probably low stomach acid, low enzymatic function, not absorbing the vitamins and nutrients, minerals out of your food. So how the heck are you going to process all of these supplements? These supplements are not going to do jack crap for you. I'm trying to not curse on YouTube, but it frustrates me because if you have low stomach acid and if you do not have proper enzymatic function, all the supplements in the world, um, beyond even like the prebiotics that you were just talking about, are not really going to be as effective for you. Would you say that that's pretty accurate?
I would say it's like yes, and I mean,
Yeah,
they're helpful, but maybe only to a
a
certain
certain
degree.
extent. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, like you're not getting your full dosage probably out of that capsule, and you may need more than what you would need if you're just optimally absorbing things. Um, so it's like one of those. I don't know if people have heard of this. It's more in the tech world right now, but it's called first principles. It's this
Mm.
idea that there's principles upon which nature is built and the universe is built, and they're like physics. You can't really
Mm.
violate them. If
Yep.
you're out of alignment with first principles, typically you're either wasting time, you're wasting money, you're probably going to end up frustrated or hurt or doing damage or something like that. And one of the first principles I have for health is you have to be able to mechanically break down and digest your food, and that
Yep.
would include your supplements as well. And so if you can't make the stomach acid, make the enzymes needed to break down and absorb your food, you're always going to be playing catch up. You're always going to be changing your diet. You're always going to be trying new supplements. And it's not like the diet and the supplements don't work. It's just that they're not the first thing to focus on.
Right.
They're not the first principle. They're like the second or the third order thing to focus on.
Yeah, I agree. It's like we have to start at, my friend Becky's on. She just said, start at the root and not just put band aids on things. And that's what I feel like happens with a lot of people. And they end up, like you said, spending a lot of money on things that may be half or a quarter as effective as if they would fix the mechanical issues going on with the gut.
Yeah. Importance is kind of it's a common thing when you're trying to fix a car or an engineer or something like that, where you're trying to put things back together in a certain order, and you're trying to look for what can you get your most bang for your buck when you're trying to sort of support things. And so failing to even test, I think that's the other thing. Like, everything should be a test. So
Yes.
failing to even test, for instance, HCL Guard or any other HCL product, That's literally less than $50 test. Oh, and if you go with a company like ours, you can get a refund.
Yep,
Not
I
every company
love
will.
that. That's been
Um,
so cool. I'll just like interject for a second. I have had people that I've sent to the Healthy Gut, and all the links are in the information section. And I said, try this out. And I would say 9 out of 10 people love the products and they're working awesome for them. But I have had the odd person who said, this is not what I needed. It didn't work. And you guys are like, yeah, we'll take it back, give you a full refund. And I've never seen a company, a supplement company, that actually will do that, that gives someone their full money back. So yeah, back on your point, you could test out with HCL guard to see if the low stomach acid is actually an issue for you.
yeah, I mean, look, we spend so much money on food, on other tests, on
Hmm.
appointments with various healers and
Hmm.
providers, and to not rule this out as an issue for you, I think is um it's just silly. It's so simple. I know that it can be daunting sometimes to do the HCL challenge, but that's why I've built the best support team,
Yep.
I think, in the world at our company. That's why we offer our money back guarantee. So to try to take the risk off, because I know it can be a little challenging if you're not used to this type of experimentation on yourself. But it's one of those things, along with enzymes. Like
Hmm.
these are just like so simple, low cost tests that are like go, no go. They either
Yep.
work or they don't. And
Yep.
your risk is mostly just a little bit of time, a little bit of effort,
Yep.
and barely any money. So I, I love finding things like that. I love finding these things because otherwise you can go spend $500 on hormone testing, which you
Yeah.
hopefully should at some point if you can afford it. But the outcomes and the protocols are much more complicated than just did this product improve my experience for
Right.
30 days or not. That's such a different outcome in a simpler experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people will say, oh, just have some apple cider vinegar or lemon before your meals. And I found that some people, yeah, that's going to be adequate, but most people, it's not enough to elicit the response that you would get from something like HCL guard. Have you seen that?
Yeah. No, no, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's actually something that's, people could do it tonight. Go grab the apple cider vinegar out of the cupboard, take a tablespoon, either before your meal or after your meal. Apple cider vinegar is like between a 2.35 and like 2.4-ish on the pH scale. Of course, your brand and where you are in the world might differ.
Right.
Um, so the stomach gets down to around 1.5, between 1.0 and like 1.5 is when it sort of finishes creating stomach acid, and that's the optimal time to break down food, and then it starts to indicate to the sphincter at the bottom of the stomach to start opening into the small intestine. So adding in a acidic liquid like apple cider vinegar is going to help bring that pH down. And maybe
Mm.
that little bump is going to, maybe you're making 80% of your stomach acid, and maybe just a shot of apple cider vinegar is going to get you down into that 2 range or that 1.5 range to really help you. Um, I find that both from a biology and a theory perspective, I think that it's probably getting you symptom relief, but I don't know if it's actually getting you back to like physiologic conditions
Mm.
that you'd want for long-term nutrient release, proper killing of incoming bugs that are in your food, things like
Yep.
that. So I question whether apple cider vinegar, and the other thing that people do in the South, and I only know this because my grandma's from the South, and she was doing this for me as a kid, is Coca-Cola, not the other types, but just regular Coke, with all the sugar and everything, has a really low pH as well. I think it's just below apple cider vinegar. It's right around
Mm.
2.3 as well. And so at least for her, she would say, like, old grandma's tale was like, if you have an upset stomach, drink a
Oh
Coke.
yeah, we always did that. I'm from the South too. Yeah. Anytime we were sick and throwing up or anything, it was like, get that child a Coke.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's all of it around the pH, but I think a lot of it's around to just like lowering the pH of
Yep.
the stomach helps it get back into its right rhythm. So So I'm not opposed to those tests. And actually, if you take a shot of apple cider vinegar and you have a bad reaction to it, you get a lot of like upset and burning.
Mm.
Take some baking soda; it'll help neutralize it. But that's another cool indication that maybe you have some gastritis or an ulcer, and that is
Mm.
definitely a time to go to the doctor and get a upper endoscopy. Make sure that you don't have an ulcer or some sort of intense gastritis. Because if you can't tolerate apple cider vinegar, you're not going to tolerate HCl guard
Mm-mm.
or any other HCl for that
Mm-mm.
matter.
That's actually one of the clients I had earlier this year. I had encouraged her to try HCL Guard, HCL Challenge, and that's how she found out that she did have an ulcer and was able to go to the doctor and get treatment for that. And she had been having all these issues and had no idea. And I'm like, yeah, well, that just, it uncovered it. It was uncomfortable, but she'd been suffering with a host of other things and had no idea that that was really at the root of a lot of the problems she was having. So it uncovered some things for her.
Yeah, and this is a great time. I can't get this message out there enough. Like if you're a health nerd, you're watching this show, you're therefore you are a health nerd.
Right.
You're willing to change your diet. You're willing to go carnivore. You're willing to do whatever diet. You're willing to invest in supplements, and you're still experiencing gut issues. Do not rule out getting a colonoscopy or endoscopy
Yeah.
because I just had this exchange with another one of our community members who was like, so upset that HCL Guard didn't help her and some other our products didn't help her. And I really encouraged her to go get those tests done. And sure enough, she had what's called a double loop
Ooh.
and in her intestines. And you can't supplement that. Like there are medical
Mm.
conditions. Our supplements do not treat medical conditions. They don't fix those types of medical conditions like ulcers and things like that. So if you've been digging for a really long time, maybe it's just one of you that needs to hear this today, but like just go get the
Yeah.
endoscopy done and verify that the organs are healthy. Like
Yeah.
they're actually in the right places, they're the right size, and they're the right shape. Because is it a very small and rare thing to have actual GI, deformities? Yes, but it happens.
Yeah.
And that you can be chasing your tail forever, only to find out like, oh no, I don't have this part, or I'm missing this flap or whatever. And so
Yeah.
there is really good stuff that also comes from knowing that you are mechanically okay. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, fine. It's not, my organs are the right size, the right shape, and they work. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Now I got to go back to that food thing. I got to try the carnivore diet. Maybe got to try some healthy gut supplements. Maybe I need to go to the therapist, work on my trauma.
Yeah.
That can help you pivot and know where to go next to help your issues.
I agree. I 100% agree. And we have to keep an open mind with these things 100%. I mean, it's just vital. Are women more affected with low stomach acid than men, do you think?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I would say so. Maybe because of the hormone, just the complexity of the hormones. Also, women are just way more in tune with their own bodies.
Yeah.
And so maybe if men and women are actually affected the same, we'll never know because so many men like myself are just a little dense and not quite as sensitive and aware. And so I think naturally women are just more in their body, more in tune with their body and the rhythms. I do think more women than we can ever imagine are suffering with low stomach acid, and the way in which they talk about it is different than how we might have said so far on the show. They'll say things like, "Man, I really want a steak, but I can't do red meat. It doesn't agree with me."
Yes.
Or, I would love a chicken breast, but I don't know, it just sits like a brick inside of me.
Yes. That's
Um,
so many women try to increase the meat and the protein in their diet, which is really helpful, but they literally can't digest it. I just had this conversation I was getting a blood draw the other day, and the phlebotomist was complimenting me on my hair and my skin and what do you eat? And I just said a lot of red meat, a lot of steak. And she's like, oh, I can't eat that. I just can't do it. And I'm like, probably low stomach acid and low
yeah, yeah.
enzymatic function. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they literally can't right now. That's
Yep.
why without the right enzymes and without the right stomach acid, it literally does sit around. It does cause burping, gas, bloating,
Mhm.
uncomfortableness, heaviness. But that is like anytime I overhear a conversation at a conference or anywhere with a woman who says something like that, I'm like, oh, that's almost a dead ringer every time for low stomach acid, low enzymes.
Yep. What would be something else that a woman might say that could implicate that as well?
Um, uh, People who or women who I think I don't know. That's like the most dead ringer one. I don't know if I
Yeah.
have another one.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, because the reason why is that it's anything related to high protein. So any
Mhm.
type of high protein meal, if someone is complaining about that or says they can't tolerate it, but it's a normal thing, like it's not normal to eat like a 48-ounce prime rib. Like, I mean,
No. Mm-mm.
but we're
No.
talking about 8 ounces of
Yeah.
meat here. If you can't do 8 ounces of meat, something's going on.
Yep. I
Um,
agree.
so I think that's a big thing. I think the other thing is typically food sensitivities.
Mm.
If someone is like, I can't do dairy or I can't do eggs or, things that are more staples,
Yeah.
that's like, I can't do like watermelon or strawberry, like these random vegetables and things like that. But like, I can't do nuts, things like
Yeah.
that. I'm like, oh, there's typically a stomach acid and a enzyme issue here. And
Yeah.
then that leads to a leaky gut and it leads to a food sensitivity. So anytime I hear food sensitivity or I can't do meat, to me, that's related right up to the stomach and the enzymes.
Yeah, my followers they get a little confused because I am always like posting pictures of my food, and for the longest time I couldn't eat egg whites, I couldn't eat cheese, and now I'm like cheese, egg whites. I mean, I have my breakfast casserole all the time, which is like sausage, egg, cheese, heavy cream. I eat it cold. It's my cold pizza for breakfast deal.
Nice.
And I mean, my body does great with it. The only thing I've really changed, I mean, I've changed a lot of things, but I know that having the HCL guard and the digestive enzymes as a support for me over almost the last year has allowed me to start to eat a lot of things that I were just totally off the table for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the dairy component I think for your audience, most people have been told and trained that lactose is the issue. There's lactose in
Mhm.
the dairy and that causes your issues. And I think that that's true for some people, but I think the majority of people are actually reacting to the casein, the protein,
Mhm.
because we know that the majority of food sensitivities and food intolerances are actually related to proteins, not related to sugars. And lactose is a sugar. So you can lose lactase, and that's true. Good thing Holozymes has lactase in it in case that's an issue for you. But I
Mhm.
think normally the bigger things is the non-breaking down of the proteins, whether it's whey or casein in your dairy, that ends up
Mhm.
causing a lot of the food reactions to dairy. And so if you can break that down, if you can use an enzyme product to make sure you break that down, if you can support stomach acid, or at least rule it out that you don't have low stomach acid to fully break those things down. I've seen a lot of dairy issues go away when you
Yeah.
think about it from a protein perspective rather than a carbohydrate perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my husband last night, he was like, "How are you eating that?" I was eating this cheese dip that I got, and he's like, "How are you eating that and you're okay?" I'm like, "'Cause I've been healing my gut. It worked 'cause I can eat cheese now, and I love it. It's really delicious." So and this is not a question that's on the list, but it popped in the chat, and I think it's a good question. And see this a ton with women, especially over 35, that they cannot digest fat. And a lot of women are trying to do keto and they're trying to do these more higher fat diets, and they really cannot tolerate the fats. And we can talk about types of fats. I'm having Kate Shanahan on the podcast tomorrow. Just stay away from the seed oils, but good butter, tallow, ghee, suet, they can't handle those.
And fats are like, well, they're like everything. They're complex. They're like an onion. You can peel back layer after layer after layer. And so fat digestion is related to
Gallbladder. Yeah.
gallbladder bile release, but it's also related to enzyme function, lipase, and the ability to remove those. The other thing is that people switch to keto and switch to carnivore, and they're like, in their head, mentally and emotionally and financially, they've made the choice to make the switch, but they didn't like have a freaking business conference with their body and their gut and be like, okay, guys, on Monday, I'm going to need you to crank up your production by 10% or not 10%, 10 times the amount of like lipase and bile acids, because we are totally going in a different direction and we're going to take care of this thing and we're going to be super healthy. And so instead, we just make this change emotionally and mentally and financially. We start it, and then the gut is playing catch up. And so one thing is just, if it's in the first 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks, like your body might be slowly ramping up its capacity to make bile acids to get them there. Your gallbladder might be coming back online. Maybe it had been shut down because you weren't eating very much fat. And your lipase production may have been curtailed and it might be ramping up right now. So if it's the first few weeks, get support with something like Enzymes, or just wait and slow down on the fats a little bit. If it's past that, then yeah, there's something, maybe looking at some gallbladder support, maybe looking at some whole enzyme support, something like that. You could try a TUDCA. Some people like to do that. It's a type of bile acid in a capsule form. Those types of things can help for certain individuals. But again, it's more of a guess and check type thing.
Yeah, and I find a lot of people adding in HCl guard actually helps them to stop the loose stools when they're adding in when they're trying to up their fat, because that's, people either go constipation or they go loose stools, but I've seen that help and also help with constipation as well, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, again, stomach acid sets the tone. So bile acids work better when the stomach did its job.
Yep.
So we have to separate the fat away from the rest of the molecules in the food. It has to be in a certain bath in order for the bile acids and the lipase to work correctly. So yeah, if your stomach acid's wrong and you're having a fat malabsorption issue, definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, and I think someone's saying they can't increase their HCl due to meds. I'm assuming they're on PPIs. I'm not sure. Um, what would you say to that?
Um, it might be related to a corticosteroid or something like that. I guess the best thing to do would be to try to bridge off of, use bitters in the meantime, as well as maybe some apple cider vinegar. And so, bitters they get a bad rap because most of the time they don't taste that good, and you're supposed to
Right.
swirl them around on your tongue for like 20 to 30 seconds before you eat, and it's not super enjoyable, let's be
Yeah.
honest. But that's one of the most effective ways to increase your natural stomach acid production, and it's totally usually compliant with almost any situation. So bitters would be the thing to do, and you got to go after it for real though. You got to give it the 20 to 30 seconds, and let your natural digestive juices get going.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. So one question I had on my list is, oh, actually, this is a question that just came up in the chat. I'll ask that one instead. Would acne, itching, and rosacea be possibly caused by low stomach acid?
Not caused, but part of the matrix of issues for sure. So rosacea is typically considered an autoimmune disease by certain individuals. Acne could be a lot of causes, but one of them is a detoxification issue as well as
Mm,
hormone issues. And we know that stomach acid, number one, is going to help prevent leaky gut. It's going to help prevent microbiome dysbiosis. It's going to help you get nutrients you need to have a low inflammatory environment. All of those things are related to, typically to inflammatory issues and detoxification issues as well. So anything you can do to get nutrients in the body and reduce inflammation in the gut is going to support those things. So I would say if you don't test that and you're willing to pay, $100 for a skin cream or something like that, then you got your priorities backwards. So test both.
yep, I agree. And one question I did not put on the list, but it kind of just came to me, is how is butyrate production and butyrate connected to, or is there a correlation or connection in this whole issue of hormones, the whole topic of hormones?
Yeah, I mean, back to the previous question around skin issues, butyrate, increased production of butyrate and supplementation with butyrate products tends to alleviate skin issues
Mm.
if done for like 60 to 90 days. And part of the reason why is butyrate's so anti-inflammatory to the gut, which then ends up becoming systemically anti-inflammatory, as well as if your skin issues or if your hormone issues are related to detoxification, the butyrate is going to help make sure that things are not getting recirculated as much and hopefully get things out of the body. So, and in the short run, Tributylin X and butyrates, eating fibers and prebiotics and things like that can be super helpful. In the macro scope, remember I said as estrogen declines, your microbiome diversity declines.
Yes.
Part of aging is loss of microbiome
Mm.
diversity. And so one of the things that can prop up the microbiome diversity and create the conditions for a longer, more diverse microbiome is butyrate and butyrate supplementation. And so as you're aging, looking into something like a Tributylin X as an anti-aging supplement is, I think, where the future of gut supplementation is going to go, because we want to do everything we can to prevent that loss of microbiome, because it's actually an organ and it feeds into your immune system, it feeds into your brain, it feeds into your bones, into your ovaries, everything.
Mm.
So butyrate is essential in the conversation around keeping your microbiome diverse, and that should help regulate. I mean, we don't know this for sure, but theoretically, it should help regulate beta glucuronidase, and it should, especially if you're too fast or too slow digestively, it should help bring you back closer to normal as well on your elimination of your stools.
Gotcha. And, I know there's a lot of different probiotics. I have one that I always link and put in the information section because it's based on your own gut microbiome sample and they kind of customize it. And, but would you prioritize a butyrate supplement over a probiotic for this? Or would you use them in
I would
conjunction?
100%,
Yeah.
because it's typically just the effects are more reliable.
Mm.
My experience with probiotics is they're helpful. I take some every day. I
Hmm.
rotate a lot. Um, the I just look at it from an engineering perspective. How can I control the outcome and get better results for somebody with one recommendation? And something like Tributylin X just gives me a lot more predictable outcomes. Probiotics, whether that must be Thrive. I'm guessing is
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, they just
Okay.
changed to Ombre now, but yeah, it's the same company. But yeah, I've been using theirs. And yeah, you just test every 90 days or so and then they'll send you a new formula based on what they find. So I've had people that can't really tolerate probiotics that are tolerating them really well.
Oh,
But I
great.
always love to hear from you from the other end of like, yeah, maybe they should try butyrate if they're still having issues or they're not getting the result that they want from just a probiotic.
Yeah, again, I think probiotics are fascinating. We'll be having some probiotics products coming out in the next year or
Oh,
two.
cool.
And so I'm not anti-probiotics. I don't want that to be what people think of me, but I do want to be realistic with them. And the truth is that we are just barely beginning to understand what the various microbiome species are and do and how their interactions work. And so probiotics seem to be very helpful for immune support. In certain
Mhm.
cases, they can be helpful for leaky gut. In certain cases, they're very helpful for constipation, and helping things like that. Other times, they can be helpful for bloating and sort of just stabilizing the microbiome if you're just all over the place. But to me, they seem hit or miss. Like, it's not
Mhm.
that. I don't have one product or one brand. It's more like, here, there's like 5 options. Go try
Yeah.
them one after another, and you'll probably find one of them that you're like, oh, this product's amazing. Um, so I haven't quite figured out how to get it so that I can be more precise with recommendations when it comes to probiotics. And so maybe the company that you mentioned is an option there. But the thing with Tributylin X and butyrates is that you're bypassing all of that and you're going to a different level. You're just going to the short chain fatty acids, and
Mhm.
everybody has a need for short chain fatty acids that's like, it's like magnesium for your gut.
Mm.
You need magnesium for the rest of your body. You need butyrate for your gut. And so while we're not sure which strains of probiotics might be best for you and how they might interact with you, we are sure that short chain fatty acids and butyrate is really good for you. And so that's why typically skipping right to that is a way to stabilize the gut faster, in my opinion. And then
And
you're in a
then
better
add the
place to experiment with your probiotics and your prebiotics.
Yeah, and if people have something like SIBO, then a probiotic, if they're not supporting that, could be very detrimental if they don't. And that's usually coming along with like low stomach acid as well. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I know that there's. Oh, I think. Well, number one, we have studies that show that if you take a proton pump inhibitor, which stops stomach acid release, that your risk of SIBO is like, I can't recall off the top of my head because I haven't seen the research in like months, but it was north of 50%.
Wow.
It's like crazy high if you just do one course of a PPI. So losing your stomach acid for any period of time seems highly correlated to SIBO and the risk of it. I'm sure there'll be more research about that, coming out in the next few years. So yes, protecting against SIBO, trying to keep it away, focus on stomach acid, whether it's bitters or ACV or HCl. The taking of probiotics with SIBO and whether or not you should or shouldn't do that, I still don't know. I still think it might be case by case.
Mm,
People are saying that you're dumping more fuel on the fire there.
right.
And I think that's probably true for certain individuals. And I think for other individuals, it's not true.
Mm,
And I think it's strain specific. So there are research studies being done right now where they're able to potentially combat SIBO with certain probiotics. So
wow. Okay.
it's coming. It's not here yet. And it's not even, I don't even think it's for sale anywhere or legal yet. There'll be a whole thing with the FDA probably around that. Will it be a prescription drug or not? But yeah, there's going to be, the future will include strains specifically to conditions. And so
Yeah.
if you have a SIBO, there'll probably be a probiotic strain, whether it's a prescription or not, that will help with that specifically.
Yeah. There's so much interesting stuff around probiotics. We have some that I decided to buy because it was specific for kids who had autism that had anxiety, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to buy that for my daughter," but they're still kind of sitting in my fridge because the butyrate worked so well for her that I didn't even have to go there with her because I'm like,
Oh, cool.
I'm always so cautious to add things for her because I don't know, it could go well or it could go really bad. She's so sensitive. So it's that specific probiotic strain that had been studied is still sitting in my fridge because we just use the butyrate. Yep.
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean, I go back to my probiotic rule of threes, which is any given product. So far I haven't found one. Maybe this new company you just mentioned might invalidate this, but it seems like 1/3 of somebody who uses something loves it, changes their life. It's the most
Mhm.
important probiotic they've ever had, and I would agree with that. 1/3 of people take it, they don't notice anything from it. It's not really helping or hurting. It's probably just kind of helping and mostly just they could be using their money elsewhere. And then 1/3 of people seem to react to them. And
Mhm.
so I think that's probably true across SIBO as well. But again, strains matter, dosages of the strains matter, uh, the body type and what's happening matters. So there's just a complexity to probiotics that is, I think we're still barely scraping the surface of, frankly. And maybe this, one-to-one testing method will be the answer. I would hope that we find an answer somehow.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, I had other questions, but we're almost at an hour. So I just wanted to ask one more that I did see in the chat. If somebody was considering trying out healthy gut products, maybe they have some stuff going on with the gut, would you prioritize the products in order of like which one you think would be like most helpful, or is there an order in which you think is that they should look in
We get this question. I get this question a
all the
lot,
time?
and yeah, I don't know that there is. It's and I don't actually know if people like this or they hate this. I've never actually gotten feedback, but what I would say is use your intuition and listen to your
Mm,
body. And that is a very non-engineer, very non-scientific way. But like if when we were talking about red meat you want it, but you can't tolerate it, or it sits around
Mm-hmm.
in your stomach area, or you have like a lot of burping or acid reflux. Like if when I speak about those things, your energy goes up and you get interested, I would say start with HCL Guard. If when we were talking about digesting dairy and like food sensitivities and like gas and bloating a little bit lower down in the midsection, food sensitivities, like you got, if things like that were something that piqued your interest, start with holozymes
Mm.
and enzymes. And if you're like, oh my gosh, I like totally get this idea that butyrate stabilizes the gut. It's the end product of much of the functions. It's the magnesium for the gut. I have a lot of loose stools. I have a lot of histamine reactions. I have a lot of
Mm.
things that indicate leaky gut or high inflammation. Start with butyrate and then build out from there. There's no right way to do it, but I do think there's if you're listening enough, and your body is speaking enough, you'll resonate more with one of those scenarios and go with that product.
Awesome. Well, this has been so helpful, and I hope that there's information in there if people are struggling with hormone issues or just in general digestion, and constipation, all those things, that there's some help in there. Where could people find you if they wanted to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, we have some special links for your audience that have a $15 off and free shipping
Yep.
for new customers. So, what are those links? I don't
They're
have
in the
them.
information section. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I have them all in the info section if people want to use them. Those coupons are good, I think, through the end of this month, November.
Yeah, yeah. So HCL, oh my gosh, healthygut.com/yogi holo and yogi HCL and yogi triX. So that'll get you over to the right product, get you the discount, the free US shipping. So go check those things out. And then after that, you can learn more about me on the website there. You can also watch the playlist here. There's like,
Yep.
we're gonna have 10 videos here
We
soon.
are. Yeah, and the other thing is you get to join a Facebook group if you get those products, that I find very valuable, because you've got extensive documents about dosing. People can post in there if they need help, troubleshooting their dosing or just other. It's just a very, very valuable Facebook group.
Yeah, yeah, we are dedicated to trying to make sure that you have the world-class support when it comes to integrating these products. And if they're not right for you, we stand by our money-back policy, because we want you to, try a different one of our products or try a competitor's product. Like, find the
Yeah.
right key to your health issues, and we don't want that to be money. So,
Yeah. I agree. Someone just said, thank you both. Come back next week with like a crying emoji. So thank you. We'll be back. I always stew on another topic. I'm like, what else could we talk about with the gut, and have Steve back on, because it's always such great conversation.
well, thanks for having me, and
Yeah.
yeah, whatever they want to talk about, or whatever you want to talk about, I'm here, and
Yeah, you guys feel
uh,
free to comment if there's a topic that we have not covered. If you go on that playlist and you're like, let's talk about this, then feel free to leave me a comment, if you're watching the replay or live, and we'll consider doing another live stream on it. So yeah. Awesome.
awesome.
Well, thanks guys. We'll definitely we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye.